Sally Wainwright, welcome to the University of Huddersfield.
Thank you.
Sally, you were at your graduation ceremony today. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did have it's been a wonderful day.
Also, you mentioned at the graduation that your father worked at the university. We didn't know that.
All right.
He was a lecturer, was he?
He was a senior lecturer in the education department
Right.
in the 1970s and 1980s.
70s and 80s, right. Okay, so it would have been at that time then the Polytechnic
Yes,
of
yes.
Huddersfield.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask you a little bit about your work. But before we do that, I think it was indeed the Guardian newspaper that described you having an acute ear of speech. And this goes back to when you were a young girl. How did that happen, or how?
I don't think anything happens. I often think that being able to write dialogue is a talent, a bit like being able to draw. It's just something some people can do, and that most people can't. A bit like acting as well. I think most people can have a go at acting, but there's only a very, very few number of people who actually do it really, really well. And I think it's just something you're born with. I don't think it's something you can acquire. I think it's something you can probably fine-tune and hone down. But I think it's kind of, and this is only my opinion, but I think it's something you're born with, an interest in language and a particular interest in dialogue, but the ability to reproduce it in a way that has a verisimilitude, I think is just a rare.
And do you find you still adopt that approach now? You listen to how people talk?
I don't consciously listen to how people talk.
You can just recall?
In fact, when I write dialogue for my characters, I'm usually thinking more about how I speak rather than things I've heard people say. I mean, occasionally people will drop a great one-liner and I think, oh, I must remember that. But I don't.
Do you write it down?
Yeah, I do, occasionally. But I don't sit, on buses or in cafes consciously listening to what people are on about.
Did you write as a girl?
Oh yeah, I wrote from being, I can't remember not writing. I can't remember, right from being 6 and 7, me and my sister would, often it'd be strip cartoons. We'd create stories with strip cartoons because we could both draw, and so we'd draw characters and write the dialogue. And then that developed into probably about the age of 11 and 12, writing plays that we used to read out to we used to perform together at night. We'd spend the day writing plays and then performing.
Were you a good actress?
In the evening. Only in a room with nobody else in it.
And it went from there, because you went to York University, didn't you?
Yeah,
for your degree.
I wrote a play at York, and I was allowed to present it as part of my degree. It was quite a formal degree. It was called English and Related Literature. It was at the University of York. And it was in 9 parts, and one of the parts of the degree was what they called an independent paper. And you would have to you would propose a subject, and you'd normally be writing about a poet or a playwright or a novelist or a genre or whatever. But you had to get it passed by the Board of Studies before they would agree to that being a worthy academic enterprise. And I asked if I could write a play, and nobody had done that before. So they said, well, you can, but you've got to write the play first, and then we'll decide whether it's worthy of academic merit before we can say, yes, it can be part of your degree. And on the understanding that if I wrote the play and it was no good, they would say, sorry, you're still going to have to do something else because that can't be part of your degree. And they ended up giving me a first for it. So it was, they did decide it was worthy of academic merit, and they gave me a first for it, which at the time was, it was just very encouraging. It made me think, I am good at this. I can do this.
And was it ever performed anywhere?
Yes, part of the condition of doing it as part of the degree was that I had to take a production of it. I had to put on a production of it, as well as write it. I had to put on a production of it.
Does it bear any relation to your work you do now?
Yeah.
In as much as did you pinch bits out of it, sort of thing?
Yeah. It was very heavily influenced by Barry Keefe. I was very much trying to write like Barry Keefe at the time. And I no longer have a copy of it. I don't know where I would find a copy of it because I wrote it on a typewriter. All the copies I've probably ever had. There might be one in the attic somewhere, I don't know. But my memory of it is that it was very much in the style of what I write now. I probably read it now and cringe, but my memory of it was that the dialogue was quite pithy and down to earth and funny, I hope. And then we took it to the Edinburgh Festival and got a really bad review in the Scotsman, which was exciting.
You should never read critics' reports. And this area, you don't live around here now, but you grew up, you were born in Huddersfield, grew up in Sorby Bridge. You base a lot of your dramas in the north of England. Yeah. Why is that? Why the north of England? It's not a
conscious decision. It's not something I
sat down and decided to do. Or something like that?
I think what I've always been aware of for me that is important in my work is authenticity. However imaginatively I hope I write, it has to be very grounded in reality. It's like not being able to write for a character till you know what their name is. They have to be real. And for me, writing in the vernacular and the accent that I grew up with just makes it seem more real. Filming things in and around Sorby Bridge and Halifax makes it seem more real to me. And if it's more real to me, I hope it'll be real to the audience. Even if that it's a part of the world they're not familiar with. I think if you root something very specifically in a very particular part of the world, it will have a realness that will speak to people.
Is that why you use the actual place names in
Happy
Valley?
If I had to call Hebden Bridge, Haley Bridge or whatever, it just wouldn't have. I'd worry about where that was, and it wouldn't feel real to me. So I think it's really important to be. Again, it's about verisimilitude. It's about convincing your audience that this is real, and if you can do that, they will engage.
And you, as well as writing, you're a producer, you're a director. Is there one you like best, or is
they're very different disciplines. I like them all for
because
different reasons.
not most writers don't, do they? They write and then they step back.
Quite increasingly, writers do direct their own work.
Right.
It's different writers like doing different things. I know writers who wouldn't want to do it and who like stepping back from it and have somebody else realise their vision. But it's something I've always felt. Again, right from university, I was directing plays. When I started writing plays, proper plays, I started directing at university, and it's something I've always had a compulsion to do.
Happy Valley was a marvellous success.
Thank you.
Both series.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
As a local lad, can I just say that? Will there be another series?
Yes, there will.
But you can't say when.
That's the problem at the moment is that it's not going to be for a while. But there's certainly a determination and a commitment from the people who matter to do another series. So. It will happen, but in a way, though, the second series was 2 years after the first one, and I think the gap between series, the audience is used to seeing things year on year, but I think the second series showed that it doesn't have to be a year. That was 2 years, and it might be even more before the third one comes out. But I think it made such an impact that I don't think the audience will go away quickly.
No, I'm sure you're right there, and. Is it difficult as a writer to keep going with a particular drama like that? Because I did read somewhere that it had sort of finished last time in the second series. It had an end.
Right.
Is it hard then for a person in your position, the writer, to right now, where can I take this now?
No, it's not. It varies because I think with a series like that, you've got to give a satisfying conclusion. There was a fashion a few years ago to end a series with a hook, and it's annoying for the audience because you never know if you're going to get another series. So you might leave your audience up in midair, and you can't come back to fulfil that promise. So with the end of a series, you've got to promise things to come, but you've also got to give a conclusion. So I always try to do that, and I think the other aspect to that is that as a series progresses, like I'm writing the 4th series of Last Tango at the moment, and I'm always worried by the 4th series you're going to run out of steam, or me personally anyway, because I experienced that on the Braithwaites, I experienced it on Scott and Bailey, where I wrote 3 series and then moved away because I had run out of ideas for those characters. But with Last Tango I found that I know the actors love it and definitely want to come back. And so, if you know, there's that commitment and interest from them. And as I've sat down to write it, I found that it is still fun to write. So, and I think a 3rd series of Happy Valley would be fun to write. After that, I don't know.
And currently, or it may have just finished now, you've been working on a BBC production about the Brontë Sisters, and I believe their relationship with Brother Branwell, if I'm correct, to Walk Invisible.
Yeah.
To Walk Invisible.
I'm just in the last week of the edit at the moment with that. We finished filming about 4 weeks ago.
Right. And without giving the plot away or whatever, just roughly what's that about?
The main thrust of the narrative is it looks at it starts in the summer of 1845 when all 4 siblings were back living at the parsonage. They'd all been away doing other things, and circumstance had brought them all back together in the July of 1845. And the main thrust of the narrative is Branwell increasingly becoming ill with alcoholism, and the 3 sisters realising that they're never going to be able to depend on their brother financially, which is what women had to do then because they had very little autonomy. And it's about them realising that they could try to make a living out of writing. This thing that they'd done since childhood, they could actually start trying to make money out of it. So it's about how their difficult domestic situation actually spurred Charlotte on initially to go out, to put their work out there and to try and find a publisher.
And did you have to research that heavily?
Yes, I mean, I've always been interested in the Brontes. And I feel like I've always known a lot about them because as a child I would get taken to the parsonage by my parents. It was one of the things you did on a Sunday afternoon was go to Haworth. And I've been interested in them for a long, long time. But then when I sat down to write it last January, I spent a month up in Haworth, working in the library at the parsonage, reading, just revising everything the reading I'd done over years and years and years. And then so January I was revising all the research, and then February I spent writing it.
Yes, because I was just going to say that it must be, obviously we have the books, we have probably diaries and letters that were written, and those can be revised, but and taken into account, but you won't actually know as a writer, and you must find this quite a lot. This is an actual person. You don't know exactly what they were like.
No.
Do you then have to bring? Do you give it your best guess, if you like, or do you create a character for them around the information you've been given?
It was very interesting doing this because it was so different from what I've done before, where I just invent people. So knowing that you were not entirely exactly inventing someone, this was somebody who lived a full life and lived and breathed, and who you're trying to recreate. And I did feel a responsibility of that, of how accurate is this, and what would it really be like if we went back and met the Brontë Sisters, and what would they really be like? And it's tricky because you end up thinking, whatever I do, it probably wasn't like that. So I just give it my best shot. It's my interpretation of what it comes close to what I imagine it might have been like, and I think it'll be different from what a lot of people expect because of all the myths we have bought about the Brontes over the years. I think people will find it very different. I think one of the things I really wanted to get as accurate as I could, because there are descriptions of them, was their physical appearance. So Charlotte was 4'10" and Emily was 5'8". So they must have cut quite an unusual couple of figures together. And there are various descriptions about oddities, like when they were in Brussels, Emily used to lean on Charlotte. So I really tried to cast actors who were extremely good actors, but also bear a physical resemblance to the descriptions that we've got of the Bronte family. So that was my starting point, was to physically make them resemble what we think they look like, based on evidence. And then the characters that have come through, again, just based on the research and the endless reading I've done about them.
And when will we see that?
It's going to be on at Christmas.
Excellent.
On BBC.
We're looking forward to that. And hopefully we'll see you at the university again at some point.
I'm delighted to come back to the university.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.